My wife admitted she slept with my business partner and had no regrets. Then I admitted I had documented evidence of her affair for months and was ready to send them to court. 5 years of marriage, and Sarah chose our anniversary dinner at Mistral, one of Boston's most upscale restaurants, to detonate our life together. I should have been devastated, should have caused a scene, should have done something other than smile calmly and cut another piece of my perfectly prepared salmon while she stood there with Ryan, my business partner, waiting for me to break. "You're not even going to fight for me?" she demanded, her voice carrying across the dining room as other patrons turned to stare. I looked up from my plate, meeting her eyes with the kind of calm that comes from months of preparation. Why would I fight for someone who's already made their choice? "But Sarah, you're going to be very surprised by tomorrow's delivery." Ryan shifted uncomfortably beside her, probably wondering why I wasn't playing the role of the devastated husband he'd expected. "What delivery?" Sarah asked. But I just returned to my dinner, dismissing them both with the indifference of someone who'd been waiting for this exact moment. They left together, Sarah's heels clicking angrily against the marble floor, while I finished my anniversary dinner alone, quietly celebrating the fact that I transferred our joint business assets to my personal accounts just hours earlier. The hidden cameras I'd installed in our home office 3 months ago had captured everything, every stolen kiss, every whispered plan, every moment that confirmed what I'd suspected when I noticed Sarah's sudden interest in working late and Ryan's convenient excuses for private meetings. I paid the check with a card Sarah didn't know existed, walked to my car with the satisfaction of a man whose careful planning was about to pay dividends, and drove to my brother Mike's apartment in Cambridge, where I'd been staying for the past week. "How did it go?" Mike asked as I walked through his door, and I couldn't help but smile. "Exactly as planned. She took the bait perfectly, and now we move to phase 2. I pulled out my phone and showed him the text I prepared months ago, ready to send to our attorney first thing in the morning. "Ellen's going to love this. We've got everything we need, and Sarah just gave me the final piece by confessing in front of witnesses." Mike shook his head in amazement. "I still can't believe you saw this coming months ago." But I had seen it coming, had felt the subtle shifts in her behavior, the way she'd started treating our marriage like a business arrangement she was ready to terminate for a better offer. And I'd responded the only way a marketing consultant knows how, with research, documentation, and a strategy designed to protect my interests when the inevitable happened. I opened my laptop and showed Mike the extensive digital evidence I'd been collecting, like a prosecutor building a case against organized crime. Photographs from the private investigator I'd hired captured Sarah and Ryan at the Fairmont Copley Plaza, the Four Seasons, and 3 different boutique hotels across Cambridge, their affair documented with timestamp precision that would make any court happy. "Jesus, Nathan, you've got everything," Mike whispered as I scrolled through folders labeled by date and location, each containing phone records, hotel receipts, and Ryan's credit card statements that I'd accessed through our shared business accounts. I clicked on another folder revealing transcripts of conversations I'd recorded using spyware I'd installed on Sarah's phone during one of her long showers. Conversations where she and Ryan discussed not just their sexual escapades, but their plans to squeeze me out of our marketing consulting firm once they made their relationship public. Listen to this one from last Tuesday. I said, playing an audio file where Sarah laughed about how clueless I was, how easy it would be to take half my assets in a divorce, and how Ryan had promised her they'd be running the business together within 6 months. Mike's jaw dropped as Ryan's voice came through, clearly detailing his scheme to embezzle client funds through fake vendor invoices. Money he'd been funneling into a secret account to finance his future with my wife. "I've been tracking every transaction for 3 months, I explained, showing him spreadsheets that would make a forensic accountant weep with joy. Ryan stolen over $2,000, and Sarah knew about every penny because she helped him create the false documentation. My phone buzzed with another frantic call from Sarah the 7th in 2 hours, but I let it go to voicemail while I called Ellen, my divorce attorney, who I'd retained quietly 6 weeks ago. "Ellen, it's Nathan. The trap just sprung perfectly. She confessed publicly, and I've got everything documented exactly as we discussed." Ellen's laugh was sharp and satisfied. "Nathan, with evidence this comprehensive, she'll be lucky to walk away with her car. Send me everything tonight, and we'll file first thing in the morning." As I hung up, Mike asked the question I'd been waiting for. "What's this delivery you mentioned to Sarah?" I smiled and pulled up my browser, showing him the overnight shipping confirmation for packages I'd prepared weeks ago. Evidence packets going to her parents, her sister, her boss at the nonprofit where she volunteers, and 10 of our biggest clients who need to know exactly what kind of people they've been trusting with their marketing budgets. Mike stared at the shipping labels in amazement. "You're destroying both their careers simultaneously." But I wasn't destroying anything. I was simply revealing the truth they'd worked so hard to hide. The same truth that Sarah's deleted text messages had revealed when I recovered them using software that she didn't know existed. Each message was a breadcrumb leading to a bigger picture of betrayal that went far beyond adultery, extending into fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to steal my life's work. "The beautiful part," I continued, "is that Sarah doesn't know I froze our joint accounts this afternoon, canceled her credit cards remotely, and transferred our business contracts to my personal LLC that she has no legal claim to. Tonight, while she was probably celebrating her freedom with Ryan at whatever hotel they'd chosen for their victory lap, she discovered that her financial safety net had been quietly removed, leaving her stranded in a reality she wasn't prepared to face." I woke up early the next morning and began executing the professional destruction phase of my plan with the precision of a military operation. My first call was to the IRS fraud hotline, where I provided detailed documentation of Ryan's tax evasion scheme, including bank records showing unreported income from his embezzlement activities and false business expense claims that would make any federal agent salivate. The evidence package is being emailed to you now, I told the agent, watching my carefully prepared dossier wing its way into the federal investigation system that would soon make Ryan's life very complicated. My second call was to Marcus Chin, CEO of our biggest client, the tech startup that represented 40% of our revenue. Marcus, this is Nathan. I need to inform you about some serious issues with my business partner that affect your account security. Within minutes, I'd sent him proof of Ryan's embezzlement, along with evidence that client funds had been diverted into Ryan's personal accounts, effectively ending our 3-year contract relationship before Ryan could steal any more from them. By 9:00 a.m., I'd contacted 8 more major clients with similar evidence packages, watching our shared business collapse in real time as contracts were terminated and payments were halted, leaving Ryan with nothing but mounting legal bills and a rapidly shrinking professional network. Meanwhile, Sarah was discovering the harsh reality of financial independence when her attempts to pay for a hotel room with Ryan resulted in a humiliating scene at the Westin front desk. My friend David, who worked there as a manager, texted me a gleeful update about how Sarah's credit cards had been declined 3 times before she finally called the bank to discover her accounts were frozen pending investigation. She started screaming at the desk clerk about identity theft, David wrote. And Ryan had to use his personal card, which also got declined because apparently his accounts are being monitored by federal investigators. I spent the morning strategically contacting key figures in Boston's marketing community, sharing carefully edited versions of Ryan's embezzlement evidence with industry leaders who would ensure that news of his financial crimes spread through professional networks faster than gossip at a high school reunion. By lunch, my phone was buzzing with calls from colleagues expressing shock and offering support, while Ryan's reputation was being systematically destroyed across every professional platform that mattered. Sarah attempted to return to our Beacon Hill townhouse around noon, but found the locks changed and a legal notice posted on the front door informing her that she was no longer authorized to enter the premises due to her involvement in fraudulent business activities. The security camera I'd installed captured her breaking down in tears on our front steps, calling my phone repeatedly while passersby watched her obvious distress with the kind of morbid curiosity that accompanies public meltdowns. "This is better than any revenge movie," Mike said when I showed him the footage. But I wasn't interested in revenge. I was interested in justice. And justice required that both Sarah and Ryan face the full consequences of their choices. The final touch was revealing to Mike that I'd been feeding false information to Sarah through a fake email account for weeks, making her believe I was having an affair with my assistant Jennifer, giving her the moral justification she needed to pursue Ryan without guilt, while providing me with documentation of her premeditated betrayal that would be invaluable in court proceedings. By evening, Sarah had launched a desperate social media campaign that would have been impressive if it weren't so transparently manipulative. Her Facebook post painted me as an emotionally abusive husband who had driven her into the arms of another man through years of controlling behavior and financial manipulation, complete with crocodile tears and carefully staged photos that made her look like a battered woman seeking sympathy from our mutual friends. I waited exactly 3 hours before releasing my Counter-Strike selected audio recordings that I'd edited together to create a devastating montage of Sarah's real voice, discussing her plans to take my money, her contempt for our marriage, and her detailed strategy for framing me as abusive to gain sympathy during divorce proceedings. "Nathan was never enough for me," her own voice declared through my speakers as I posted the audio files with timestamps and context. "I deserve someone who can give me the lifestyle I want, and if I have to destroy him to get it, that's his problem for being so naive." The response was immediate and brutal, with friends who had initially rallied to her defense now posting confused and angry comments about being manipulated into supporting someone who had clearly orchestrated her own victim narrative. Sarah's best friend Lisa called me within minutes of hearing the recordings, her voice shaking with rage and disbelief. "Nathan, I am so sorry. I had no idea she was capable of this level of deception. I've known Sarah since college and I thought I knew who she was, but listening to her talk about you like that makes me sick." Lisa's call was followed by similar conversations with 3 other mutual friends who had initially believed Sarah's abuse claims, but now realized they'd been manipulated into taking sides in a conflict where the victim and perpetrator roles were completely reversed. I strategically leaked information about Sarah's financial complicity to her family, sending her parents and sister detailed evidence showing how she'd used money from our joint accounts to fund romantic getaways with Ryan, including receipts from expensive restaurants and hotels that she'd paid for with my credit cards while lying to my face about working late. Her sister Jennifer called me that evening crying as she apologized for initially believing Sarah's story about my supposed abuse. "She asked me to lie for her," Jennifer confessed. "She wanted me to testify that I'd seen bruises on her arms, but I told her I couldn't do that because it wasn't true. Now I understand why she was so angry with me for refusing." Meanwhile, Ryan was desperately trying to contain his own public relations disaster as word of his embezzlement spread through Boston's tight-knit business community like wildfire in dry grass. He attempted to contact me through 3 different intermediaries offering to testify against Sarah in exchange for my agreement not to pursue criminal charges. But I ignored every overture, because I didn't need his cooperation to destroy both of their lives. The public humiliation reached its peak when the Boston Business Journal picked up the story of Ryan's financial crimes, running a front-page article about embezzlement in small consulting firms that mentioned Sarah by name as his accomplice and co-conspirator. I saved that newspaper clipping as a memento of the moment when their private betrayal became public knowledge, ensuring that everyone in our professional and social circles would know exactly what kind of people they were dealing with when Sarah and Ryan's names came up in conversation. Sarah's desperate attempt to fight back came 3 weeks later when she hired Thomas Bradley, one of Boston's most aggressive divorce attorneys, and threatened to claim half of my business assets based on her contributions to our marriage and partnership. I almost laughed when Ellen forwarded me the legal threat because Sarah had no idea that I'd transferred majority ownership of our consulting firm to an LLC that I'd established with Mike as co-owner 2 months earlier, effectively protecting my business interests from any divorce settlement claims she might make. Your client appears to be operating under several misconceptions about her legal position. Ellen wrote back to Bradley, attaching documentation that showed Sarah actually owed me money due to her documented involvement in Ryan's embezzlement scheme and her use of marital funds to finance her affair. The look on Sarah's face when she discovered her financial reality during our courthouse confrontation was worth every sleepless night I'd spent planning this moment. "You can't just take everything away from me," she screamed in the hallway outside Ellen's office, her composed mask finally slipping completely as the magnitude of her situation became clear. "I gave you 5 years of my life, and you're going to leave me with nothing." I looked at her calmly, remembering the recording device I'd activated on my phone before the meeting. "You gave me 5 years of lies, theft, and betrayal. You're lucky I'm not pursuing criminal charges for your role in Ryan's embezzlement scheme." Her lawyer tried to intervene, but Sarah was beyond rational thought at this point, her voice echoing through the courthouse corridors as she revealed her true character to anyone within hearing distance. "I never loved you anyway," she shrieked, confirming what I'd suspected but never heard her admit so directly. "You were always just a safe choice. Someone who would pay my bills while I figured out what I really wanted. Ryan was everything you could never be. Successful, confident, willing to take risks instead of playing it safe like some scared little accountant." The irony of her calling me scared while she faced potential criminal charges for financial fraud wasn't lost on me, and I made sure to capture every word of her meltdown for future reference. Ellen handed Sarah's attorney a settlement offer that was more generous than she deserved. She could walk away with her personal possessions and no criminal charges filed against her, provided she signed divorce papers that gave her no claim to my business assets or future earnings. "This is extortion," Bradley protested. But Ellen simply smiled and pulled out the evidence files that showed Sarah's involvement in Ryan's crimes. "This is mercy," Ellen corrected. "Your client participated in embezzling over $2,000 from Nathan's business clients, used marital funds to finance an extramarital affair, and attempted to frame him for domestic abuse using fabricated evidence. She should be grateful we're offering her anything at all." Meanwhile, Ryan had been arrested the previous week after federal investigators concluded their review of the evidence I provided, facing charges that would likely result in a prison sentence of 3 to 5 years. I watched through the courthouse windows as Sarah realized that her partner in crime was no longer available to rescue her from the consequences of their shared betrayal, leaving her completely alone and facing the harsh reality that actions have consequences, even for people who think they're too clever to get caught. The most shocking revelation came 2 days later, when I sat Mike down and told him what Sarah's affair had actually represented just the tip of an iceberg that included an elaborate plan to frame me for domestic abuse and steal my business through manufactured evidence and false testimony. I showed him footage from the hidden cameras that I'd never shared before. Recordings of Sarah practicing fake injury scenarios in our bathroom mirror, applying makeup to simulate bruises, and rehearsing tearful phone calls to police about her abusive husband who had supposedly hit her during arguments about money. "Jesus Christ, Nathan," Mike whispered as we watched Sarah plant torn clothing and overturned furniture in our bedroom, carefully staging what would have looked like the aftermath of a violent domestic dispute. "She was planning to destroy your entire life, not just your marriage." The cameras had captured everything: Sarah researching domestic violence laws on her laptop, printing fake medical records showing previous injuries that never happened, and even practicing her victim testimony in front of our bedroom mirror while I was traveling for business. The affair with Ryan was actually the least dangerous part of her plan, I explained, showing my text messages between Sarah and her sister, where she discussed the optimal timing for filing false abuse charges that would give her immediate access to our joint assets while I faced criminal prosecution. Her sister Jennifer had refused to participate, which explained why Sarah had been so angry with her family lately. But Sarah had been confident she could find other witnesses willing to support her fabricated narrative of abuse and control. The most chilling footage showed Sarah on the phone with someone I didn't recognize, discussing how to make her fake injuries look realistic enough to convince police and emergency room staff that her husband had beaten her severely enough to require medical attention. "I need this to look believable," she said into the phone, "because once I file charges, I'll have access to everything while he's dealing with criminal defense attorneys and trying to prove his innocence." The delivery I'd mentioned at our anniversary dinner hadn't just been evidence of her affair. It had been comprehensive packages sent to her parents, her employer, and several mutual friends, showing not just her adultery, but her detailed plan to commit perjury, insurance fraud, and file false police reports to steal my business and destroy my reputation. Sarah's boss at the nonprofit organization where she volunteered called me personally after receiving the package, expressing horror at discovering that someone they trusted with vulnerable populations had been planning to manipulate the legal system designed to protect actual abuse victims. "We had to terminate her immediately," her supervisor explained. "The board was unanimous that someone capable of fabricating domestic violence claims poses an unacceptable risk to our organization and the people we serve." Her parents received the most comprehensive package, including audio recordings of Sarah laughing about how easy it would be to manipulate police and courts into believing her victim narrative, along with evidence that she'd been planning this elaborate deception for months, while accepting their emotional and financial support for what they believed was a troubled marriage. Sarah's sister Jennifer called me that evening crying as she apologized for not warning me about Sarah's plans. "She asked me to lie about seeing you hit her," Jennifer confessed. "When I refused and threatened to tell you what she was planning, she said I was choosing your side over family. I should have called you immediately, but I never thought she'd actually go through with something so evil." 6 months after our anniversary dinner confrontation, I was living in a stunning penthouse apartment overlooking Boston Harbor. My consulting business thriving without Ryan's criminal interference, and my bank account healthier than it had ever been during my marriage to someone who treated me like a personal ATM. Sarah had fled to her parents' small house in rural Maine after losing her job and facing complete social ostracism from everyone who had received evidence packages showing her true character. While Ryan was serving a federal prison sentence of 4 years for embezzlement and fraud, I'd rebuilt my client base with impressive speed, partly because news of my systematic takedown of 2 people who had tried to destroy me had spread through Boston's business community, earning me a reputation as someone who was both trustworthy and absolutely not to be crossed. My new office in the financial district was twice the size of the space I'd shared with Ryan, and I'd hired 3 employees to handle the increased workload from clients who specifically sought out my services because they'd heard about my meticulous approach to protecting business interests. "You've become something of a legend," Ellen told me during lunch at the same restaurant where Sarah had confessed her affair, a location I'd chosen deliberately to mark how completely my life had transformed. "I've had 4 attorneys ask me how you gathered such comprehensive evidence without alerting your targets. And 2 potential clients have specifically requested me because they want the lawyer who helped Nathan Richardson take down his cheating wife and embezzling partner." The most unexpected development was meeting Jennifer Walsh, a federal prosecutor who had worked on Ryan's case and reached out to congratulate me on the quality of evidence I'd provided to investigators. Jennifer was everything. Sarah wasn't, brilliant, ethical, financially independent, and genuinely impressed by my strategic thinking, rather than threatened by it. "Most people who discover their spouse is cheating just get angry and make emotional decisions," she told me over coffee after Ryan's sentencing hearing. "You turned it into a masterclass in methodical evidence gathering and strategic planning. It's actually quite attractive. Our relationship developed naturally over several months, built on mutual respect and shared values, rather than the financial dependency and manipulation that had characterized my marriage to Sarah." Jennifer appreciated my attention to detail and careful planning qualities that Sarah had found suffocating, but that Jennifer recognized as signs of intelligence and reliability. "I love how your mind works," she told me one evening as we planned a weekend trip to Vermont. "You think 3 steps ahead and consider every angle, which makes me feel secure rather than controlled." The contrast couldn't have been more stark. Where Sarah had seen my planning as evidence that I was boring and controlling, Jennifer saw it as proof that I was someone she could trust to build a stable future with. In a delicious twist of irony, my experience with Sarah and Ryan had created an unexpected business opportunity when 3 different men contacted me through Ellen asking if I could help them gather evidence against spouses they suspected of cheating. "You've accidentally created a niche market," Ellen laughed. "Betrayed husbands want to hire the guy who took down his wife so thoroughly that she fled the state." I was considering whether to formalize this side business when Sarah made her final, desperate attempt to re-enter my life through a message sent via Jennifer's office, probably hoping to circumvent the block I'd placed on all my personal communication channels. "Tell Nathan I was wrong about everything," the message read. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I need him to know that losing him was the biggest mistake of my life. Ryan never cared about me the way Nathan did, and I threw away the only real love I've ever known." And I read the message twice, then deleted it without response because the woman who had planned to frame me for domestic abuse to steal my business didn't deserve even the acknowledgement that her words had reached me.